Great Wednesday morning to you all, and welcome to another episode of Frankly Speaking Titans. And oh, baby, what a show we have lined up for you today. Want to remind everybody we are streaming on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Twitch. So join all of our different Frankly Speaking Sports platforms for the most updated information and news on your Tennessee Titans. Also, a reminder on TikTok and YouTube, we have exclusive things that we don't have on any of our other networks. But don't worry, it's still free to subscribe, so please go ahead and do so. Today's show is brought to you by the neighborhood of Hopkinsville in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, and also by 13 Dagger Tattoos, right outside the Fort Campbell Army Post in Clarksville, Tennessee. Folks, I'll tell you what, football is here. It is here, and it is in full swing, and I love it. Game one of the preseason is already in the bag, and we're looking forward to game number two, which will be versus Minnesota. Later in the show, we're going to have former Houston Oiler, that's right, Art Stringer, who played as a linebacker from 1977 to 1981. He'll be joining us, and then after him, we're going to go ahead and have the great PHALEN, reporter for the Titans at ATOZSPORTS. We're going to go ahead and recap the game versus the Chicago Bears and the upcoming game versus the Minnesota Vikings. But I'll tell you what, folks, we've been talking about it during the whole preseason since camp started. Willis versus Levis. Seems like Ali versus Foreman or something going on here. But I'll tell you what, we finally got to see both of them in action. And there's a couple things to remember here first. Malik Willis has 14 months on Will Levis as far as maturity and experience in the NFL. This was Will Levis's first game, first touch of an NFL field. And I'll tell you what, I thought he did real great. Let's start with Malik Willis. Malik Willis looked 1,000 times better than he did last year. There was a noticeable difference. He had a lot more composure at several times, let me say, and he looked like he was throwing the ball a heck of a lot better. So you got to give him credit for that. But it just seems like every time Malik was doing something well, it was overshadowed by something he was doing wrong, whether it was throwing an interception or having a fumble. And I tell you what, folks, the big knock against Willis last year was he has to hang on to the football. And he didn't do that in this preseason game. He didn't, folks. And that is a big no-no. And I'll tell you what, meanwhile, Levis got hit several times in this game, but he still managed to hold on to the football. So nobody can say, oh, well, he didn't get hit. He did. It was actually Willis who got that first drive that he was on, got to play with the starting offensive line and did a great job on a scripted series of plays that was set before the game started with the starting offensive line. Now, I don't want to discredit Willis at all because he was a lot more improved than he was last year. But that doesn't mean he's ready to take over the backup position. Leadership, composure, not turning over the ball are key elements to a quarterback. You got to remember, when you turn over the ball, you cost your team not only opportunities, but you give the other team opportunity to score. And for that reason, I'm real concerned about Malik Willis because I did not see improvement in that area. Levis looked comfortable for someone who was playing in his first game. We're comparing Levis to Malik Willis, and this was Levis's first game. So when you look at this, he did throw an interception. He threw an interception late. And he had an opportunity to connect on a pass that he didn't. But I guarantee you, folks, when you see how Will Levis plays in game 2 and 3, you're going to understand why lots of people believe that he should be the backup quarterback to Ryan Tannehill. Tannehill on Monday was great. what did Tannehill do? Hit his first 16 passes, but we're talking about Willis versus Levis now. And I'll tell you what, Willis threw that interception. Josh Wiley, I know he's taking blame for it, but if you watch my segment that was exclusively on YouTube and on TikTok, we broke that play down in slow motion and showed you how that ball, everyone's saying it should have been caught, but it was at the top, guys, the top of his hands, where it was a very difficult catch, one that great tight ends maybe bring down. But at the end of the day, you got to put that blame on Malik Willis for not getting the ball where he needed to. And like I said, I thought Malik did well. I thought he did well. He showed, I'm not afraid to see him go out on the field and throw the ball, because I did see that arm of Malik Willis. The thing that concerns me, folks, and like I said before, is the turnovers. And if he's going to want to be successful, whether it's as a backup, I'm not going to lie to you, folks. I don't see Malik Willis ever being a star quarterback in the NFL. I think he could be a decent backup quarterback, but if he goes on to be a great quarterback, I would be surprised. And you know what, guys? I'm rooting for both of these guys. Both these guys are going to make the team. But at the end of the day, folks, when you're looking at one from another, I have to give the edge to Levis in this game, because I thought his composure for a first game was incredible. And I am so fired up and so pumped up to see this guy play next week. I don't know the breakdown yet of who's going to be playing, or should I say how much they're going to be playing, but I guarantee you we'll see both Malik and Will in the next game. Now, you know what, folks? As we move on, we mentioned the offensive line. A lot of questions about this offensive line. They played one series. Terrell Williams, the head coach, pulled him after that. I think he made the great move. He built up their confidence. He got him out there. They showed that they are capable. And I've said this all throughout preseason. I've said this on last week's show. This offensive line, although it is definitely not the best offensive line in the league, it's not the worst. I think people are underestimating this offensive line. I think this offensive line has, the potential to be a very decent offensive line. The issue that's going to arise is the depth on the offensive line. And if somebody goes down, not that you want to see any of them go down, but please try to wait to game 6 when Petit Ferrer is going to be back, so that we have a little bit of depth on the offensive line. But at the end of the day, folks, I was very, very impressed with them. As far as the defense goes, we didn't have any of our starters, folks. I know that. Or we didn't play a lot of our starters on defense. But I'll tell you what, the second string defense looked terrible, ugly, disgusting. However you want to word it, it was not a good showing for the second string defense. A lot of people talk about lack of depth on this defense. And, it's going to take a couple of different people to stand out in order for this defense to have some depth. And that brings me to some of the key players in preseason game 1. Let's start with the defense, since we're on defense. I thought Eric Guerra, the undrafted free agent, was unbelievable in this game. Everywhere you looked, it was Eric Guerra. And the one thing that Guerra has the ability to do, I don't know if everybody knows this, he has the ability to return punts and kicks. So from a special team standpoint, this guy could be of value, and you always have a better chance of making a team if you can bring more to the team and be good for special teams. So watch out for him. The other guy on defense that I was really impressed with, and I really think this guy has a shot at making the team as long as he continues, is Caleb Murphy, the linebacker. I'll tell you what, people forget that he had 25 sacks as a linebacker last year in college, and the year before that, he had 16. So, that's incredible. He was there again. I think he might have got a sack in this game as well. But if we can have a guy that can come in passing situations on defense and add that extra pressure on the quarterback, oh, baby, are we sitting pretty? And if these two guys can continue to do what they're doing and make the team, I'm excited about at least part of the depth that we're building on the defense. So we'll have to see about that. Other key players on offense, I thought Tyjae Spears and Joey Chestnut, both of them did very, very good. Spears, I think that was his first game as well. I thought ran hard, ran good. He had a misdirection where he had a switch and got a big gain. I was impressed with Spears. Very, very impressed. He's also going to be helping on special teams, I'm sure, kick returning and punt returning as well. Josh Wiley did not have a great game. Well, I believe this, he didn't, the tight end. But at the end of the day, I believe this was his first game as well. I think he's gonna be fine. He's gonna be fine. He's doing great in practice. I know this was a game and a big opportunity. I think the nerves, guys, and I'm once again not making an excuse for this young man, but everybody seemed at first to blame him for that miscatch by Willis. I'm telling you what, that was Willis's fault. I don't care what anyone says. I'll look you right in the face and tell you that was Malik's fault. And if you tell me differently, I'll tell you you're wrong. Now, whether it's, a great tight end should or shouldn't catch it isn't the issue. You need a quarterback that puts the ball where it needs to be put. And Malik did not do it. Did not do that on that particular play. Then I think he fumbled one. But I look for Wiley to come out next game as well. And you'll see the Josh Wiley that they're so excited about. A lot of people are saying this guy's a given to make the team. So I'll be looking forward definitely next week to see what he's is capable about. But guys, we have a huge problem. And we have not talked about it. And you don't hear a lot of people really addressing it in a desperate way yet. But it's time to get desperate. Okay? Desperation is here. We have a major problem. And you know what it is? It's special teams. Our special teams sucked on Saturday. No better word to describe our special teams. I'm sorry. You look up the word terrible in the dictionary, and I'll tell you what, you'll see a picture of our two kickers under that word because they're terrible, terrible, and terrible. What was it? Caleb Shudak and Trey Wolf. Shudak ended up making one field goal, but it just made it, and it was something like 42 yards, 41 yards. Meanwhile, Wolf missed it, and you can't have guys just make, at the end of the day, you got to make the field goal. And we can't have guys missing field goals within 50 yards in the NFL. You need guys that can make field goals. And honestly, I don't believe, I will come out, I will say it right now, put it on record. I'd be surprised if either of these guys make this team by game one versus New Orleans. I don't think either of them have the ability to be a kicker, at least for us, the Tennessee Titans, nevertheless, in the NFL. But there are other kickers out there. I don't have a list of all the names of kickers that are free agents. I know Robbie Gould's out there. Played for Chicago. I believe he played for San Francisco. And I'll tell you what, he was 100% over 50 yards last year. I think from 40 to 50, he missed 3 of something field goals. I don't remember. I think it was 7 of 10, and then he made all the other ones. So maybe he's somebody that we need to concentrate on getting. But I'll tell you what, folks, we need to go ahead and get a kicker. Let's not wait. I hate this waiting game right till the season begins. Get him in there. Get him and Stenhouse used to working together. Get the long snapper used to working with them. That way it's a smooth transition. And when we start the season, we're ready to go. And we don't have to worry about a damn missed field goal to cost us a game during the season. Now, folks, That's that game. We have another game coming up, Minnesota. And we're going to talk a little bit later, like I said to Sam PHALEN, about the upcoming game and what excites him about this upcoming game and who we should look out for. But I'll tell you what, I mentioned Willis and Levis. Of course, that competition is going to be there. I want to see Wiley, and I want to see these two guys on defense again, Garrett and Murphy, play another game and see how they do. I'm excited. I'm also excited to see, obviously, the starters play. Let's see offense and defense. No matter how long they play, I want to see how comfortable they are. There's still a comfortability, more so on offense, that needs to be there because, you have a receiver that hasn't played with your quarterback and DeAndre Hopkins, and you got a couple of other guys. It's a new offense. It's a new offense, so you want to make sure that everybody is on the same page. Once again, you're going to make some mistakes or miscues, whatever you want to call them. You want to do it while it's a preseason game and it doesn't cost you in the regular season. I'm looking forward to the game, folks, and it's going to be exciting. And like I said, when Sam comes on later on, we'll definitely talk to him about what his thoughts are on the upcoming game. And then, of course, we're going to go ahead. We're going to take a break in a moment here. And when we come back, folks, we're going to go ahead and have former Houston Oilers. I hope you guys love to get some feedback on the comment lines, but I hope you're enjoying these interviews we're doing with former Houston Oilers players. Kind of take you back to the days some of you weren't even around for. We've had many already in a short amount of time doing Frankly Speaking Titans. A lot of former Houston Oilers. We're going to continue. I know we're scheduled next week to have Bo Easton on with us. So that should be exciting right before the last preseason game versus New England. So we're looking forward to that. But I'd like to know how you like it. During the season, we'll change it up. Most of the times during the season, for you fans that aren't familiar with us, when we're playing a team like Week 1, New Orleans, we're going to go ahead and try to get a reporter. Usually we get buddy John Hendricks from Sports Illustrated who covers the Saints when we play the Saints. We'll have them come on so they can go ahead and break down their team and let us know what we should expect about our opponents. So we have a great, great season coming up for you on Frankly Speaking Titans. We also have a great remaining of the show. Let's go ahead. Let's take a break, and we'll be back right after this message.
So anxious about moving Mom into a senior living community. We feel so much better now. Mom is thriving. She's living her own life. We're totally in debt to Phoenix Senior Living because they recognize that when it comes to Mom, everything matters. I can't thank them enough for giving Mom the life we so desperately wanted her to have. She has such a sense of purpose and connection now. Her whole life has changed.
At Phoenix Senior Living, we want to provide more than just a beautiful building. In all my years of working with seniors, I've never once received a letter about how life-changing our beautiful building and decor were. But I have received letter after letter full of gratitude and appreciation for the people who have given their loved ones the love, care, and attention they needed. For every senior in our care, we invest the time and energy getting to know them, their likes, their dislikes, their interests, their needs, because truly knowing each of our residents and their families is crucial to providing excellent care unique to just them. That's our vision, and it's one we'd be honored to share with you and your loved one.
13 Daggers Tattoo Studio is looking for a new tattoo artist. Must be established with a strong portfolio and good work ethic. Stop by today at 13 Daggers across from Patriot Park on Fort Campbell Boulevard. Clarksville's ultimate tattoo studio. Tattoos, touch-ups, and consultations. See the artist's work online at 13daggerstattoo.com and get the custom experience you want with killer ink. Book today and get pricked by a pro. 13 Daggers Tattoo Studio. Working hard on the Boulevard.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Frankly Speaking Titans. Folks, lately every show that we've done so far this year, we've been going back in time and talking to former Houston Oilers And today is no different. We have a very, very special guest for you today. Let's go ahead and welcome in former Houston Oilers linebacker from 1977 to 1981, Art Stringer. Art, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good, Larry. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. And, watching preseason games, Art, they just started this week. How vivid is your first game that you participated in the NFL to you? And talk about that first game.
One of my first games that I remember, we were playing the Pittsburgh Steelers. And their center came off the line, hit me in my chest, cracked my sternum, and I was wheezing for approximately the next week. That's one of the first memories that I have. Mike Webster was his name.
Yeah, I guess that's something you'd remember. Hey, talk about you were round 9, pick 256. Mm-hmm. Did you ever realistically think that you had, you got drafted, so I guess there was some chance, but did you realistically ever think that you would play in an NFL game?
From the perspective of an athlete and my ability, yes. But football to me was really a stepping stone, a means to an end. It got me out of the inner city of Detroit. So that was the essence. That was my drive. If I were to be totally honest, after my senior year, I really didn't want to play anymore. You have to understand, I came out of high school, I was All-American. I was a running back. I ended up playing defensive line at Ball State for 1 year, 1 season. Then I was moved to the outside and played linebacker for the next 2 years. I ended up making All-American, all MAC at that position. But then coming to the Oilers, I started at the outside and I stayed there for 1 year. Then they moved me into the middle, which was a major adjustment. You're talking about a guy that was 6'1", 5/8 of an inch, 215 pounds, maybe 223 if I was soaking wet. They would list me at 225, but I was rather small.
Yeah, let me ask you this. From a mental standpoint, here you are, you're in college, you become an All-American, you were great in high school. How mentally tough is it to get acquainted to now the NFL, and how intimidating can it be, not just for yourself, but for any youngster making those transitions?
Well, if you look at the percentage of collegiate athletes that ever even get the chance to play in the NFL, it's very small as far as the numbers. But from a mental perspective, you have to go in with the attitude that you're going to make it. If you take a defeatist attitude going into the camp, then that's what's going to happen. You're there with some of the best players in the world. Well, the best players in the world throughout the league. It's an adjustment. It's challenging. And it's even more so today because the game is faster, a lot quicker than what it was back then. The changes in the game are astronomical. I sit and watch the game sometimes and say, what call was that? Because I really don't keep up with it from that perspective.
Yeah, now talk about this 1979 team. I think it's a year after you get to the Oilers. You end up 11-5, still second because Pittsburgh was so good back then. But talk about that dynamic team you played for. And let's talk even on the offensive side. You had the ability to be on after, the defense came off the field, the ability to be on the sidelines and watch one of the greatest running backs in Earl Campbell of all time. Talk about how dominating first that Earl Campbell was.
Earl was a monster. My waist is approximately 36. Earl's thighs, the circumference of his thighs was 36. With the power that he ran with and the speed that he had, I was definitely glad that he was on my team instead of opposing him.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. Talk about that defense. You had guys like Robert Brazil, Greg Bingham, yes. Ryan Felt, I think, was on that team. He had 12 Correct. Interceptions that year. Just amazing. Talk about that defense and being part of that defense with some great other defensive people with you.
If all of us could have stayed healthy, I think that we could have been just as domineering as Pittsburgh was. I think our linebacker crew. I think we were rated second behind Pittsburgh. It was always a game where 7 to 8 players were not going to play next week. They were going to be banged up, beaten down. It was just that vicious. But with the guys that we had, we were hungry. Bum's philosophy was that we don't play each other, therefore we only went in shorts and shoulder pads, whereas everybody else through the league was full dress and it was full go. He wanted us to be quick. And we took that quickness because we could heal during the course of the week from the previous game. Well, most of us could. I didn't have that luck. But we were tenacious. We were hungry. We enjoyed the game. And we just played with reckless abandonment.
Talk about Robert Brazil, that unbelievable linebacker in the Hall of Fame, and what he meant to defense. And what he meant to you? I mean, because you played the same position, linebacker. What did he mean to you personally?
Well, you could always count on Robert from sideline to sideline. He had the speed, the agility, the power, and the size to pretty much dominate the game. We were so cohesive that even off field we would hang together. It was like a family. It's not like a lot of teams where certain players tend to separate themselves and sit on one side of the room, the other players sit on the other side of the room. Back in the 70s, some of the players didn't really want to communicate with each other. But in the Oilers camp, we all got along. It was a lot of fun. But Doom was domineering. I mean, he could run a quarterback down that's going in the opposite direction after he has been blocked 2 times, and the quarterback never makes it to the line of scrimmage. So he was a very dominating linebacker.
Now, one of the most controversial times happened that same great year. You had 11-5 versus Pittsburgh, of all teams, in the AFC Championship. There's a controversial call, which I've seen over and over and over again, when Mike Renfro comes down, which to me was a catch. I mean, over and over and over again, I watched it. His feet lands in, but unfortunately, we didn't have instant replay back then. So the umps on the field, the refs on the field called it no touchdown. What do you remember about that play?
I remember that the momentum of that game changed tremendously after that call. Now, true to the fact, Renfro was in, and I believe that play is what caused them to implement the instant replay. Now, a little side note, Ron Johnson, number 29 of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I went to high school with Ron. I played Pee Wee League football with Ron. And then I played against him. He played with Eastern Michigan. I was at Ball State. We were in the Mid-American Conference. I played against him there. And then he was drafted by the Pittsburgh. I played 3 times a year for three years that stretched from 79 to 81. So I'd see him back when I would go back to Detroit, I'd see him there. But that call, it took the winds out of ourselves, truly.
Yeah, and I can see why. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, when we watch it over and over again, it's got to be heartbreaking to watch over and over again, especially if you played in that game because of the mistake that was made. Let's talk about your coach a minute, Bum Phillips. I mean, they've had some unbelievable coaches. The Oilers had Glanville. I know Jack Pardee was there after you. But talk about Bum and talk about, Bum was not only a decent head coach, but he knew how to build defenses as well.
Very true. He actually knew how to build teams. Bum had the knack to pick players that would be cohesive with what he was trying to get accomplished. And he was a true players coach. He implemented camaraderie. Our rooming situations, he would take extreme individuals and make them roommates when we would travel on the road. That helped to build camaraderie, unity. And I like this philosophy that since the Oilers are not on our schedule, then we're not going to play each other out here on the field. So it was quick. And he had this little tower back then. I don't know if you really remember that. He had a tower that was maybe 25 feet tall. And he would stand there and handle the practices. And his whistle, if he didn't like something, if he got upset, if it got too aggressive, for example, if a guy didn't feel well or a guy felt that his teammate cheap shot at him, the next play he's going to go off on him. Toot, take it to the house. He didn't want us getting that physical with each other, which I loved. With the
You know,
exception,
that brings up a great point, and you're a great person to ask this question to. We're down to 3 preseason games now instead of 4, which, you know, to a lot of people makes sense. But in your opinion, from a conditioning standpoint and from a game shape standpoint, should the starters play, and how much in that last preseason game?
the last preseason game is essentially a tune-up so that they can fine-tune the personnel that they have and have a cohesive unit. The way that things have changed, I don't have faith in a Monday night game and then there's a Thursday night game and then there's a Sunday night game. If you play any of those 3, you still have another game that next week, which might be 3 to 4 days. Conditioning is the problem because quiet as kept, a lot of players don't come to training camp in the best condition. Some of them come to training camp to get into condition. I don't know if that still happens today, but that was the thing when I was playing.
And could your type of defense play in today's game?
Yes, we could play in today's game.
Because you were so much more physical back then, Art, than they're allowed to be today.
Correct. I shouldn't say this, but they should put a skirt on the quarterback or a red cross. I mean, you really can't literally touch him. I can remember Pastorini as a quarterback. He would take some licks that you would not believe. And we used to wonder, how can you get back up? You don't see that now. Now you have to pull up. You can't really be aggressive or hit like a Jack Tatum, for example. Or
do you think that's ruining the game, Art, or no?
I think that's making it complacent for the players, in all honesty. The physicality of the game is gone. It started to change when I came into the league because 2 years before, I remember they used to have a tackle called clothesline. They made that illegal. They used to have crackback blocks where the outside receiver would come back in and crack down on the defensive end or the tackle. That incurred a lot of knee injuries. So they took that out of the game. But now players are put into situations where you can't help sometimes for your helmet hitting the opposing player. I mean, things tend to change. Your balance is off. I think it's good for the health of the players. Back when we used to have concussions, they say, okay, you got your bell rung. How many fingers do I have up? Put a little smelling sauce under your nose, pat you on your behind, and send you back out on the football field. They don't do that now. If you hit a person too hard, they're taking you out of the game, and you may not play the next week. With us,
that's the big difference.
Yeah,
we may not play next week now. Where back then you used to go right back in the game.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You may be on the sideline for 2 plays, but you're okay, big boy. Let's go get them. I'm glad and I'm glad that now they have documentation. Back in our day, you didn't have a history of what your injuries were. Well, the trainer knew, but it wasn't documented. So that if you had problems, like say at my age, where I've had 9 concussions that I can remember, 13 knee operations, a wrist, a thumb, an ankle, dislocated both shoulders. I have 8 screws, 2 pins, and 2 plates as a result of football.
Jeez. And there was some concussions you probably didn't even count because you didn't know you had them.
Oh, exactly. I've seen guys make a hit and go to the wrong sideline because they were disoriented. Or they come back into the huddle and just have this wild look in their eyes. We'd have to tell them, hey, why don't you go to the sideline, take a timeout? Because you don't want the player, if a player is hurt, give him time to heal. I mean, careers are short. I think the average is 2.5 years?
That's what they say, yeah.
And back then, 2.5 years, and you're making $20,000 to $30,000 a year. Now they pay that in taxes, every week out of the salaries that they have.
It's incredible now. Hey, let me ask you this. It was about 6 years after you retired from football that the Houston Oilers moved to Tennessee. Correct. Do you remember what your feeling was when you heard the news that the Houston Oilers were getting up and going out of town?
I felt very depressed and dejected. The players that played with the Oilers didn't have a home. Now the Tennessee Titans are gracious enough to invite us back at least once a year. Prior to that, the Texans invited the ex-players to the first or second game that they had. From that point in time, we used to have annual reunions. But when you're a player without a home, we can't go to Tennessee and have a reunion, but we do now. So I thank the Tennessee Titans for that.
Yeah, a lot of the former players that we've had on said the Tennessee Titans, they invite you back a couple times a year for some reunions during a game. What is your thoughts about them going ahead and bringing back the old Houston Oilers uniforms, I think twice this year, and I think in one of those games they're inviting some of the former players to that game.
Correct. I was excited about it. I mean, I love that uniform. I hate that they changed it. I know a lot of people here in Houston and in Texas hate it. They're upset. But they have to understand the situation when Bud left Houston. Our football field was one of the worst fields in the league. There was one game we had to forfeit because the other team didn't want to play. We had boards that went across. I mean, it was like taking AstroTurf and throwing it out there on 610. The turf was just that hard. It had zippers where they would zip in the pitcher's mound. We were getting ready to play Pittsburgh one year. Pastorini got tackled in that area and ended up having a cut from his mid-calf all the way up to his groin. I don't know if you remember that. And he had to play hobbled, which kind of cost us because he wasn't as effective as he should have been. But I
lived in Houston for a little over a year, but it was after you played, more in 89, 90 when Warren Moon was there. I think it was right after Earl Campbell. Jerry Glanville, I believe, was the head coach there. So I do know what that field is like. I've been to the Astrodome many, many, many times. Last question, I'll let you run, Art.
All right.
When you were a linebacker, who's the one guy you wanted to play against that you said, let him come my way, and you just wanted to hit?
Well, actually, it was my rookie year, and we were playing the Washington Redskins. And they had a running back named John Riggins.
That's right.
And Riggins was a tough cookie. The harder you hit him, the harder he would run. After result, and Larry Little, the pulling guard that they used to have, trying to take him on with my shoulders and give him hard joints. The man was 260 pounds, hit me at 225. So I had to give a lot. But Teddy Washington, who was the outside linebacker, we tackled Riggins on one play. We all ended up in the hospital. I had a dislocated shoulder. Teddy had a dislocated shoulder. And I think John had a problem with his neck. But that was a tough game. And then playing against Miami. A lot of the people that I used to hear, I was hurt one game. I wanted to play against OJ. That was one running back that I would love to have played against.
Actually, I got one more question because you just brought it up. The running backs were a lot tougher back then than they are today as well.
Oh, and a lot bigger. Cincinnati had a running back that was 260 pounds. The fullbacks averaged about 235. They were quick. They were strong. They were agile. It was a task. But then you had those speedsters like Billy Cunningham or some of the other small guys with like Greg Pruitt Mike Pruitt wasn't that small, but they ran hard. And our games were tough games. It wasn't a lot of passing. Well, there was passing, but when Bum went to a two tight end offense and brought everything in, that kind of, to me, hurt the running game because it was Earl Campbell right, Earl Campbell left, or Earl Campbell up the middle. The imagination was taken away. So he went back to split receivers and trips to one side or two receivers to one side, to the strong side. It was a lot more imagination. It spread the defense out. I mean, if we were playing against a team like that, we would love it. We would love it because all we had to do was cover the gaps. There was nothing they could do. You can't run. And we had defensive backs that would come up and support, and they would put a lick on you. Absolutely.
And they sure did. You're absolutely right. They would get a lick, and you won't see that in today's game, but back then, unbelievable. Well, listen, buddy, I could talk to you all day long about the old Houston Oilers day, but unfortunately, we're out of time. Art, I want to thank you so very, very much taking time out of your schedule to join us on Frankly Speaking Titans today.
Well, Larry, I thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
All right. Stay safe, my friend.
All right. You do the same.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was the great Art Stringer, former Houston Oilers linebacker from 1977 to 1981. Let's go ahead. Let's take a break. Let's hear from our sponsors, and we'll be back right after this.
So anxious about moving Mom into a senior living community. We feel so much better now. Mom is thriving. She's living her own life. We're totally in debt to Phoenix Senior Living because they recognize that when it comes to Mom, everything matters. I can't thank them enough for giving Mom the life we so desperately wanted her to have. She has such a sense of purpose and connection now. Her whole life has changed.
At Phoenix Senior Living, we want to provide more than just a beautiful building. In all my years of working with seniors, I have never once received a letter about how life-changing our beautiful building and decor were. But I have received letter after letter full of gratitude and appreciation for the people who have given their loved ones the love, care, and attention they needed. For every senior in our care, we invest the time and energy getting to know them, their likes, their dislikes, their interests, their needs, because truly knowing each of our residents and their families is crucial to providing excellent care unique to just them. That's our vision, and it's one we'd be honored to share with you and your loved one.
13 Daggers Tattoo Studio is looking for a new tattoo artist. Must be established with a strong portfolio and good work ethic. Stop by today at 13 Daggers across from Patriot Park on Fort Campbell Boulevard. Clarksville's ultimate tattoo studio. Tattoos, touch-ups, and consultations. See the artist's work online at 13daggerstattoo.com and get the custom experience you want with killer ink. Book today and get pricked by a pro. 13 Daggers Tattoo Studio. Looking hard on the boulevard.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Frankly Speaking Titans. Oh, baby, what a show. We had Art Stringer, was awesome. He brought it today, former Houston Oilers linebacker. And now we've talked about the former Houston Oilers. Now we're going to talk about today's Tennessee Titans. We're going to go ahead and recap what we saw this past weekend and what we might be able to expect this weekend. Let's go ahead and bring in Titans reporter at ATOZSPORTS. Let's bring in Sam PHALEN. Sam, how you doing, buddy?
Doing great, Larry, man. Thanks for having me on. Happy to talk Titans.
Oh, yes. And, the season finally started, Sam, and obviously the big hoopla, the big talk was about this quarterback battle for second-string quarterback. You saw the game. I saw the game. Seems some people have different perceptions of what we all saw. What was your assessment of the two quarterbacks in their play?
Overall, I feel pretty solid about both. I think both Malik and Will had some imperfections to their games, and some of those just being the accuracy and the execution of some throws. Malik's interception was a bit of a high pass to Josh Wiley. He overthrew a guy. Wiley has to make the catch, but certainly Malik would like to have that pass back and get it down. And then, Will Levis at the end of the game there missed a big opportunity for an X play that could have ended up in the end zone, followed it up with an interception. But overall, Larry, I feel like both of these quarterbacks showed me a lot to give me confidence. Malik was more confident, more ready to pull the trigger, more poised in the pocket than he was last season. We saw him maneuvering some pressure, keeping his eyes downfield, delivering balls on time. And that was a big, big thing for him last season that we've seen him do in practice, but finally got to see him do it in a game. And then for Will, it was all about the tools that I saw in Will Levis as a prospect that I think I saw it flash at times yesterday. A lot of good arm talent, throwing across his body, throwing off platform, ability to evade a lot of pressure and keep moving, sneaky athleticism. So some imperfections, but both of these guys, I think, showed me enough to believe there's a lot of room to grow moving forward.
Yeah, and I think some people forget out there, Sam, this was the first time ever that Will Levis stepped onto an NFL field. So there had to be different types of mental aspects as far as nerves and stuff that played, and I'm not making excuses for Will by no means, but try to remember what Malik Willis looked 14 months ago like, and that's what Will was going through. But the only thing that concerned me, I'd love to get your take on it. I agree with you 100%. Malik Willis looked like a different person out there as far as throwing the football and confidence-wise. You could see the confidence in this kid. But the only thing that concerned me, Sam, and I'd love to get your take on it, is there's one thing that he didn't fix, and that was his inability to hold on to the football. We saw that a couple of times in this game where, he fumbled the ball. Yes, he had an interception. I agree with you. Maybe the ball should have been caught. I watched that play over and over again. It was definitely a high throw, but the fumble was more concerning to me than the high throw. And when you have a quarterback battle, I know Mike Vrabel, Mike Vrabel, he's about no turnovers. And at that time, you got to be confident with the backup quarterback that they're going to come in the game and not turn over the ball.
It is interesting. Malik he had 2 fumbles. One of them was lost. The other one he was able to pick up himself, but there was a little bit of a difference there. I believe Will Levis got hit from behind very hard. And I'm in the press box in Chicago, like, how the heck did he hold on to the football when he had it cocked in his right arm ready to throw, and then he got drilled? But he held on to the thing, and Malik, did not do that. So that I would agree with you, Larry. I think that's an area that Malik still needs to improve. The volatility of turnovers is not something that Mike Vrabel is going to be happy with. And so both of these guys need to figure out a way to clean up their act and make sure they don't turn the ball over. I mean, Will had that late turnover. He had another throw early on in the game that probably should have been intercepted when he threw it behind Colton Dowell. So, right. I think both quarterbacks had a few plays amid all of the progress and all of the positives where you said, okay, we're getting close to coughing up the football there, and we need to make sure that we're not making huge mistakes. Not every play needs to work, but we can't have big turnovers and big negative plays. And fumbling the ball certainly falls under that umbrella.
Now, we got to see a series by this. Everybody's talking about how bad, and I love being under the radar when it comes to our offensive line, because I think people are overestimating how bad this offensive line is. I'm not going to say they're a top 10 offensive line. I just don't think they're as bad as everyone's making them sound out to be. And on the first drive, I have to say they look pretty good with Malik Willis at the helm.
Yeah, they did a nice job of protecting Malik. And so, I'm looking forward to seeing how that continues if we see more of the first team offensive line and the rest of the preseason. And if we get to see Will Levis behind them, but Malik was well protected. Tajay Spears had some good room to run a couple times on that first drive. I think it's all relative. You have to consider that Chicago's got maybe the worst pass rush in the NFL, and they didn't have many of their defensive line starters out there. They had a lot of defensive starters, but none of them really up front. So I think that you have to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt in that aspect. But I do believe this line can be better than people give them credit for. And I don't even think they need to be league average. I think they need to be improved from what they were in 2022, which was a liability. They were a liability for Ryan Tannehill's health. They were a liability for Derrick Henry's ability to run the football and have room to run and get out of the backfield. And so I think you could see some improvement there with Aaron Brewer moving to his natural position at center. Peter Skoronski, early returns on him have been great at left guard. And I think the question right now is left tackle and right tackle. What are you going to do on the outside, and what does that do for your pass blocking if Andre Dillard and Chris Hubbard can't be your answers at tackle? You might have to reshuffle the deck, but good to see a new unit look like they were just that, a unit, and that there was some cohesion with that group on that first drive.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I know Brunskill had one beautiful block on a run they showed over and over again. So it was nice to see them hitting some people and blocking. But the big surprise of the game, which I thought was one of the biggest disappointments, was the way the defense came out and just pretty much let Chicago go up and down the field.
Yeah, a big problem with the Titans was their explosive plays last year, like this Titans secondary. And so to not only have explosive plays, but have them be back-to-back drives on screen passes is, not great recognition on the part of the defense. And so certainly something that they need to clean up and that they can't have happen. Luckily, it was not the Titans starters out there making those mistakes. It was the second team defense for the most part. So maybe some hope that Christian Fulton and you get Sean Murphy Bunting out there and this group looks a little bit better. But yeah, the defense was rough early on, and you have to make tackles. You have to have some better recognition on those screen passes.
I want to talk about two straight plays specifically on the defense that I thought played great. And there was a couple more. I know a coach mentioned Chance Campbell, but two guys that I really seem to like as undrafted free agents. Eric Guerra looked really, really good, I thought. And I like this linebacker, Caleb. I think he's a linebacker / cornerback. Caleb Murphy, I thought was, just the pass rushing. And believe me, I know what he did in college, 25 sacks last year, I think 16 the year before. If he makes the team, he could help a lot from a pass rushing standpoint on this defense.
Yeah, I actually like the first guy that you pointed out there, Eric Guerra, the cornerback, the UDFA, the only guy that was a tryout at rookie minicamp that the Titans then signed to their roster for training camp that's still around. And he was their tackling leader, had a couple open field tackles, including a TFL, had a nice punt return right at the end of the game that, put the Titans in a position and put Will Levis in a position to try and win that game at the end. So that's a guy that did everything Mike Vrabel and company are asking for, a very competitive cornerback spot right now is, can you tackle and can you find value on special teams? And he did that. So, I was very, very impressed with where he's at. I think his stock is going up. And Caleb Murphy has another opportunity too. Like, you probably are going to keep 4 edge rushers. You have Harold Landry, you have Arden Key, and you have Rashad Weaver. Whoever's in that 4th spot is probably still up in the air. So Caleb Murphy, had some pass rush impact. I believe he had a sack on the day. Might have had a fumble recovery. The question with him to me is, what can he do as a special teamer? Not something he's well versed in from his time at Ferris State. And if he can do that, then you start to talk about a guy who could crack this 53. And a bigger question when you talk about the roster, how comfortable are the Titans with getting some of these guys through waivers if they want to try and put them on the practice squad? If you can make a case for yourself to get picked up by one of the other 31 NFL teams, the Titans have more incentive to keep you on the active roster.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Let's talk about this week, Sam. We'll start with the practices versus the Minnesota Vikings before the game where they played, practice with each other. What are the teams looking for, at least from the Titans' perspective? What do we want to see in these practices?
Well, I'll be flying out to Minnesota tomorrow morning to go cover those practices for ATOZSPORTS, and I am pumped up to watch the Titans go against specifically Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson and have a quarterback like Kirk Cousins that is accurate as a passer, throwing the football to these guys. Last year in joint practices, you got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in town, and you had Mike Evans sitting out, and you had Julio Jones a little banged up, and Tom Brady wasn't even with the team. So you ended up not really playing some of the NFL's elite. But for a guy like Christian Fulton, a guy like Trey Avery, for any of these rookie corners that are looking to take another step in their development, reps against the best wide receiving core in the NFL, arguably, is going to be really, really formative. So I'm really interested in seeing how some of these guys stack up with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison.
This weekend versus Minnesota, the preseason game, how much I know it hasn't been announced yet, but how much would you expect to see the starters play in game 2?
Well, I think it depends on the starter. The Titans are not really known for letting somebody like Ryan Tannehill play in the preseason. I don't think we'll see Derrick Henry play in the preseason, but we could get some more of the same, some more offensive line, some more of these linebackers. I think the Titans are putting an extra emphasis on making sure they stay fresh this training camp and this preseason. That means guys like Jeffrey Simmons and Danico Autry and DeAndre Hopkins, some of these veterans might not see much preseason action at all. but they're really interested in figuring out some of these position battles. So I would like to see maybe a couple more series of the offensive line, specifically one with Will Levis at quarterback, and give him an opportunity to throw to Kyle Phillips and Chris Moore and Nick Westbrook-Akine and some wide receivers that are a little bit higher up on the depth chart so you can figure out exactly what he is. But I would be surprised if Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry or Jeffrey Simmons were on the field in Minnesota.
Sam, I can understand that from a defensive perspective, but when we're talking about the offense, and it's a new offense, it's a new coordinator, it's a new system. We have new players, DeAndre Hopkins. I want to ask this the right way, but I'm a firm believer that starters should play more in preseason than they do because I believe it carries over to the first game. Because number one, you have it's basically a bye week after game 3 of the preseason because you have it 2 weeks before the actual season starts. Does it hurt the continuity and the effectiveness of the team going into game 1 not being ready right out of the chute? I know some coaches, Belichick, I believe, is one of them, that likes to play their starters at least a half of that last game so they go into it, maybe on a high. It could be a low if you have a bad performance, but at least that way they're used to playing together. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you need to play a full half, but I am with you. I've been an advocate for a while on NFL starters on the offensive side of the ball should play at least part of a preseason game together to get the experience of playing in a live game as a unit, especially when you start talking about an offensive coordinator change, especially when you talk about a new offensive line and a new wide receiver quarterback relationship with DeAndre Hopkins and Ryan Tannehill. It has carried over in the past. And if you look at the stats of NFL quarterbacks that don't play in the preseason, they do not have a very good record in week 1 of the regular season. Right. And so this is something that I don't expect the Titans to do because it hasn't been something Mike Vrabel has been very keen on doing in the past, but it's something I absolutely think they should do. I think there is some value in getting experience in a game, even if it's just the preseason game and just for a few series with your starting group out there together. You don't want to come out slow week 1, and it's hard to just hit the ground running with a new offense.
No, I agree. I'm with you. That I've said that for years now and years. I even said that on a take I did yesterday on Frankly Speaking Sports. Same thing that you just mentioned. I'm right there with you, buddy. Couple more questions. We'll let you run. We know you got to get to Minnesota. What battle, now that you've seen game 1, are you looking, besides the Willis Levis, that's obvious, but what battle are you most intrigued about watching this upcoming game on Saturday?
Well, I think it continues to be the back end of the secondary. I think the cornerbacks, there's probably 3 spots up for grabs, and there's been a lot of different UDFA guys that have come in here and been impressive. Armani Marsh is like Kevin Byard's favorite player in the world out there in the secondary. I've been a big fan of Stephen Jones Jr. I've been a big fan of LJ Davis, who had a rough moment in that game against the Bears, but also made a nice play and a couple nice tackles on special teams. And then, as I just mentioned, Eric Garrer continues to build his draft stock. So how did those 4 stack up with a Chris Jackson or a Trey Avery or some of these guys who have been with the Titans before? That whole room is going to be really interesting to keep an eye on. And then my second one would be inside linebacker. Monty Rice only played 7 snaps for the Titans in the first preseason game, which has been pretty reflective of so far his performance in training camp, where Jack Gibbons is ahead of Monty Rice on the depth chart right now. I have no doubt about that. But with your coaches praising Chance Campbell and Monty Rice seemingly not getting on the field very much, where does he stand in their eyes? I'm curious to watch that one play out here over the next few weeks as well.
And you mentioned Jack Gibbons. What a great story he is from last year.
Yeah, no, a UDFA that came in and didn't make the 53-man roster after getting a nickname from the Titans at the beginning of training camp, Dr. Gibby, but wound up coming back and getting activated because of injuries and just got so much better as the season went on to carve out a role for himself as a guy that was on the field for a lot of significant defensive snaps by the end of the season. And, Mike Vrabel has said that he's gotten so much better physically just training for NFL football over the course of an entire offseason, coming out looking and playing fast. And I talked to Jack Gibbons like a week and a half ago, and he just talked about the confidence he has now seeing in the NFL for a season where he is able to react and play quicker without second guessing or hesitating. And it's really, really started to translate for him. So, as you start to look for the Titans, who are kind of known for finding hidden gems at the inside linebacker position, Jack Gibbons looks to be the next guy up as a hidden gem for them. That's going to be a big part of this defense this season.
Now, we mentioned some of the guys, like you said, that are really showing up so far. Who is the one guy that might be under the radar that you feel could possibly make this team?
One guy under the radar that could make this team. Well, unfortunately, I think he got banged up the other day. And Jonathan Ward, the running back, was somebody that I've been very high on as a pass catcher in the Titans running back room. I'll continue to sing the praises of Jaden Peavy on the defensive line. I think he's turned into a lock to make this team. And then my second guy, or my last guy, would be somebody I just mentioned, Stephen Jones Jr., the cornerback, who has been working primarily with the second team defense. I think they see him as their fourth or fifth corner right now. Really did not get the ball thrown his direction much at all in Chicago because he was pretty sound in coverage and has found some special teams value there as well. So Armani Marsh is getting praised by Kevin Byard. Eric Garr is flashing in the preseason. You've got some vets that you know there. Stephen Jones is a name to watch out of Kennesaw State that I think, or Appalachian State rather, that I think can end up making this team.
All right, last question, my friend. And I'm not asking about a record or anything like that, but how do you think the Titans fare in the AFC South this year? Personally, I think Jacksonville may just be a little bit overrated. Don't get me wrong. I think they got a lot of good young guys on that Jacksonville team, but I still think they're a couple years away. That's just me. How do you feel about the Titans and their chances in this AFC South?
I think a healthy Titans team should win this division. I'm not going to say Jacksonville's overrated. They have a lot of really young talent. I think the addition of Calvin Ridley in Jacksonville could really put them over the top if he is as advertised right now. But even last season, when it seemed like the floodgates were open on the Titans, Mike Vrabel kept this team competitive enough to compete for a division title right down to the last snap of the season. And so, assuming that Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill are on the field and they're able to stay relatively healthy with their starters, I think they're the best team in the division. That said, I don't love their depth in Nashville right now. I think Jacksonville's way deeper and, is able to sustain a lot more and withstand a lot more. If the Titans have a big injury or two at a few key positions, they might be in some trouble. But if this injury bug starts to correct itself and go the other way, in their current form, they're the best team.
Sam, you're going to be in Minnesota. Before I let you run, why don't you tell all our listeners how they can follow you and get your reports so that they know what's going on in Minnesota?
Well, check out the Twitter account. It's Sam_PHALEN. You see the last name and the spelling there on the screen. Check out ATOZSPORTS as well. We've got live coverage talking about basically every single Tennessee Titans practice, at the press conferences, at the games. And, we've got articles coming out regularly. So I'm on this grind throughout the rest of the preseason and training camp. ATOZSPORTS and Sam_PHALEN on Twitter is the best way to check it all out.
My friend, well, enjoy your time in Minnesota. Stay safe, and we appreciate you taking time out of what I know is a real busy schedule for you to join us on Frankly Speaking Titans.
All right. Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me.
All right. Stay safe, my friend. All right. That was the great Sam Phelan, Titans reporter, A2Z Sports. Like he said, follow him. Great stuff on A to Z Sports, as well as the articles from Sam Phelan. We'll keep you up to date, and we'll try to keep you updated with some of his stuff as well on Frankly Speaking Titans. Well, folks, another week. I tell you what, it is going fast. Before you know it, we're going to be on the regular season. After this week, just one more preseason game. That's right. Enjoy the game, folks. Let's go out there, beat Minnesota, have a good showing by these young guys, and we'll be back to recap it next week on Frankly Speaking Titans.